And basically, that was designed to cover, because IP version 4 is being used heavily by the users, and it's going to be used in a way that no IP addresses are available if I follow the normal default classification, class A, B, and C, without going to the other classes. There are not enough addresses to give to users. So what did they suggest at first, before jumping to IP version 6? They said, let's go to a classless domain, i.e. providing a subnetting number, identifying, masking it, so you can actually divide normal classes into normal subnets and people to use and addresses. So usually, how would it look like? Basically, I'll give you a MAC address, an IP address. And for example, in this, I'm giving you 192.168.10.0, and I'm actually masking it with 27. Now, 27 here refers to the mask of the IP address. And these are the number of ones inside that mask. Basically, you need to know that every IP address consists of 8 bytes or 8 octets. Each oct or each byte consists of 8 bits. So basically, you have 32 bits inside your IP address. And that's in binary. In decimal, that will be how it looks like. 3 digits in every octet. The numbers goes from, in every byte, from 0 to 155. Okay? That's the range of your numbers in each byte. So, looking at the mask, it's 27. So in binary, what I'm going to do is do it in a binary format. That's 8, 5, 6, 7, 8 ones, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 5, 6, 7, and that's basically what's left. So that's your mask in a binary format. So that will indicate to us that one of the actual parts is called, so how do I know which one is an actual address, i.e. subnet, and which one of them is an actual use for the hosts? The one reflects the network. Meanwhile, zeros reflect your actually hosts. So what is that range of ones? That's basically the network components. Those, same. What is this one, which consists of both? What do we call it? Both. No, the hosts are zeros only. The interesting part. That's basically what we are concerned about. From that byte, we can know number of subnets, number of hosts, and the increment between each subnet in the users. So the interesting byte will give us the number of subnets, number of hosts, and the actual increment. So we can know the range between the subnets. We have an actual table that I gave you, I think in the previous slides available here. And basically, that's defining how can I actually, there's it, the value of bits in every of those bytes in the decimal format. So what we do put it in this way, we have 8 bytes. Each one of them is higher 2 to the power of the actual byte, the actual bit. That's 2 to the power 0. So basically, if I say 2 to the power of 0 is 1, 2 to the power of 1 is 2, that's what's that? 22, 46, and then sorry. That's 128. Okay? So we have that on the side to know exactly each bit, what's the actual value in this format. So we use that to actually find our increment. There are 2 ways of finding it, but let's start with each one of them. Let's return to our main page. I'll find the details that we need to find. And basically, now I'll ask you 2 major questions. How many subnets do I have? The subnets, we need to follow the actual network component inside your interesting byte. And how many, the formula says 2 to the power of 1s will give me my subnet. In other words, that in that example, it's 2 to the power of 3 will give you how many subnets? So that's 8 subnets. Now we need to know the number of hosts. And basically the number of hosts are two, same formula. So the hosts are basically 2 to the power of zeros. Not just in the interesting byte, but in the full address range. Not just the interesting byte. So number of zeros in the actual mask. Meanwhile, here is the number of ones inside your interesting byte, i.e. the subnets. So in here, number of ones, I said, in the interesting bytes. In here, number of zeros. That's it. So in this example, will be 2 to the power of 5, and that will give you how much? 32 minus 2. So having completed the actual formula, the formula says 2 to the power of zeros minus 2. What are these two reserved addresses?
So one is 0 and 2.5, so broadcast 1.
The broadcast one, that's exactly what it is. One of them is for the broadcast, and the other one is the actual subnet address. So each subnet has an address, and that needs to be written down. So the 0 and the actual 255. In some cases, it's not 255, it's 32 or 64, depending where it is residing in the octets. And now the number of hosts inside each subnet is 30. I have one information left that I need to find is your increment. And the formula of increment is basically 256. So the increment will be 256 minus the actual value of the ones in your interesting byte. And that's basically 128 plus 64 plus 32. That will give me, I think, 224. Which will give you, I think, 32 as your increment. So your increment is 32.
What's the formula?
256 minus the values of 1 and decimal. That's 256 is the actual rules. That basically is a rule. So it's a 256 that's fixed. So the formula is basically the increment, put it that way, is 256 minus the actual number of ones inside, and the value of number of ones inside the interesting byte. Okay, so that's basically, if I say this is your interesting byte, number of ones is 128 plus 64 plus 32.
Do you always start from the back?
Yes, wherever the 1 is. So the 1 is here. What's the value there?
1.
That's it. If that's the 1, you understand what I mean? That's it.
So basically we need that table.
You need that table to actually understand the actual increment. Or people already told me, I think previous said, why is it not 2 to the power of zeros? Which is 32 as well, isn't it? Is that right? But sometimes the 0 will be range of numbers, not just the final interesting byte. So I would stick with that formula. Sorry, you asked a question.
Is 256 the sum of all values that they give on?
You mean the actual value of all those?
Yeah, if you have ones on all of them.
I think we'll give you 256.
257.
We'll give you 257? No? Give you 256.
255.
Is it 255 only?
Well, it's 0 as well. 0 is 2.5.
0, yeah. Yeah, might be that reason, but basically, you need to know exactly the value of the ones, so therefore you can find the increments. That's just what I want to know.
Sorry, 256 number of 1
Sorry? Oh yeah, the value of number of ones inside the interesting bytes. Yeah, again, don't worry about that. It's basically the number of ones here has a value in our table. Just do the increment of that one. Sorry.
I suppose it's not a silly question, but I'm assuming this is separate to the host subnet.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So there'd be a question of this.
So what is the question the exam time? Again, I'm really serious when I say I don't remember from December, but exactly the idea. I'm not trying to play crazy here. But when I do those revisions, because they have been mentioned for the last 5-6 years, so simplification. Okay. So before I actually jump into the question and do the actual details, is it clear that it's 10? Everyone, yes. Again, they are given. You're not helping because zeros can be, in some cases you'll have this as, for example, 20. And that means the zeros starting from here. So that would be different. So that will not be identical. The increments. The interesting bytes will be this one. No, it will not be the same. Not always the same. Because you question, are they even always the same? Oh, you mean minus 2? The increment doesn't have minus 2. Increment is so because you need them to be there, so you jump to one or the other. Or you don't choose anything between. It's just a constant, yeah, because in some cases you have a different range, and that would be a different increment. I'll give you just an example, and you'll see how it's different. So guys, let's jump into the actual answer now. So here it's explained more in details. What I can see, let's examine this, the interesting parts. If I look at...
No.
That's what it means. So yes, my son's. So basically, what I'm saying to this guy is you need to follow the interesting bytes and find out the rest of the details, like the subnet, number of hosts, and the increment. That's basically what you need to know. So, any questions before we go to the table? Yes?
Would you have a negative host?
No. You should always have a 0, unless it's 32. And basically you're telling me everything is an address. That's different. That's basically you following the default range. You don't have that, no. So, how do I actually answer the actual details of the table? You need to show me every subnet, the range of the actual. So what I need to know, the subnet address, my first host, my broadcast last host, and the broadcast address. When I say first and last, it's like the range of the addresses. So if in this question, let's try to do it from the beginning. I know it's written. Well, let's do the beginning and work it out together. By the way, some cases you have like 64 subnets. If there is a question, I'm not going to ask you to write the 64. I'll say write 3 of them, 4 of them, depending on how it is. Again, I need the actual address of the subnet, the actual first host, last host, and eventually the broadcast address. So you have 8 subnets. So I'm starting for subnet number 1, my first subnet. And I usually, what do? The best thing of doing this, of answering this, is writing down the subnets at the beginning. So you know the range, and then you know how to go from one to the other. So if I say my first subnet, that's basically the same address that you have. So it will be 192.168.10.0. The changes only happens in your interesting bytes and everything after it. Okay? Not before that, i.e. your hosts and the actual interesting bytes that have the changes. So that's my first subnet. My second subnet, what is it? 192.168.10.32. So the actual full increment that will give you your subnets. Third subnet, that's 192.168.10 plus 32, 64. So let's start with the first subnet. I want to have the first address, the first host, last host, and finally the broadcast. Okay, so what's your first host? 192.168.10.1. What is your last host?
31.
Is your last one 31? 30, because you need to actually reserve one of them for the broadcast. So it is 192.168.10.31. Why is it not 32?
Because you need to say the last one.
That's the one for the broadcast.
Yeah.
Why is it not 32?
Because 0 counts as one.
Sorry? No?
0 counts as one.
Because the second subnet is 32. You just cannot take the address of the second subnet and use it as a broadcast. That's basically what it is. Each subnet needs to have an address. Last host is 192.168.10.30. Try to finish it. And I'll do it afterwards. No, you get that stuff. What's the binary value? You use a table. I'm trying to make it closer so I can have the space to write things down.
How do you get the last subnet?
Same thing. Reach number 7 and increment it to reach the 8. Continue with it and you'll see. Just write at least. I do want you to do. Just at least write the subnets until you reach the third one. See what happens.
Why do we stop at
Right
7?
there?
Why do we stop at 7th subnet? Because we got 8 subnets.
Who said you stop at a 7? That's the 8th one.
So we could till
You
8.
can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's the last one. That's the last one.
This is the 7th one. That's the 8th one. Do the math. So
That's the one.
okay, 0 plus 32. That's 32. That's 2. Plus 32. That's 46. 64. Plus 32. That's 96. It's 4.
Okay.
Plus 32.
You count 0 as well.
Yeah, it's the first one. Why are you skipping it?
1.
So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 until a 2 to 4. I'll give you 8. It's not 7.
Okay, so
That's a
the 0.
subnet. Why? It's just,
Okay,
it's
it
a subnet.
says it's false.
It
but it's
doesn't matter
stuck.
if it's a 0 or a 1 or a 10. It's a subnet. No, because you think so. You need to tell them what is the final address here. What is the broadcast address here? The broadcast is always the one before you enter the new subnet.
So it's like.
So this one is already reserved. You can use it. So what is the one before that? So you write 63.
Yeah.
What's the one before that? Which is the last one? That's
-1.
how simple. Let's do that one without being starting at 64. So why is this 64? Exactly. So that's fine. Everything will have here an increment of 92. This is 54 because this is the last one. I need to see the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. Do the third one, please. No, increments. What are you doing? No. Even if you increment this by 52, 65. Why are you incrementing by 53? Now you're just not creating any logic whatsoever. Now, don't do it this way. Stick with each subnet. So what is the last address in this subnet? Why? No, 63 is here. We are focusing on third subnet. 64. The next subnet, what is the number? No, that's the last house. So, fourth one. So, what do you do? What do you do? 96. So, right here, 96. So, you can, exactly. That's not the last, that's the first name. What's the first address name? The third one, which is the third address? First address. Don't do it that way. Just focus on this one. Ignore this one. Just this one. You have this one. You have first, last, and broadcast. What's the first address? That's the actual address of the subnet. You cannot use it. Who's the first host inside this? Yeah, everyone else is doing it. So 0 is equal to 1. 32 will be 33. 64 is 65. 96 was the first one. Exactly. So right here, first of all, 65. No, wait. So what's the actual broadcast? Wait, here is 96. So what's the broadcast?
64. 95. Yeah. So this should be 192.
Yeah. What's this one? Last address. Last house. You have 94, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a range. It's a range, so you need to keep between the range. All right?
Sorry, I got it.
Is it 7 or 8?
7.
No, it's 8. How is it 7? It's 8 subnets.
Yeah, there are 8 subnets.
Yeah.
So we counted till 7, isn't
No,
it?
it's 8.
And
It should be 8.
and how do we know the last one then?
Do it. If you do
Like,
it,
I did
just
it until
do
like,
the increment. Help me with this one. Can I write down anywhere?
Yeah.
So let's say it like this. 0
Yeah.
plus 32 plus
Yeah.
32
64,
plus 32
128, 96.
96 plus 32
120, 120. Yeah.
128.
108, yeah.
Plus 32.
Plus 32, 160.
Plus 32.
192.
Plus 32.
2 to 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And then we, okay, yeah.
How's the 7?
Yeah, now it's 8. That makes sense. I was counting like the whole.
Shall we do it all in details, okay, guys? So I'm trying to fit everything. Guys, what I'm trying to do, I'm giving the first subnet address, and I'm trying to fit everything underneath it without going into the next subnet. So the best way of doing it, if you have 8 subnets, just give each subnet its own address. So let's start with that one. So the first subnet is 192.168.10 and 0. What's your increment? Your increment is 32. So you need to increment 32 on each subnet. So the next subnet is ending with 32. What's the third subnet? 64. 4?
96.
That's great math. We jump between 64 to 224. So 96 plus 32. Exactly. Eight. How many subnets are these? 8 subnets. So now at least you know that each of those subnets. By the way, if you need to write in full, you need to write 192.168.10.64. Okay? So what is your, let's start with each one of them. Don't go first address in every one of those subnets. Finish it and then go to the second subnet. It's easier to do it in that way. You can, but it's easier to do it in that way. So what's the first address in your subnet and the second one? 33, just incremented by 1. What is the broadcast address in this subnet? 63. And the last address or the last host is 62. First address in this one? 65. Broadcast? No? And then the last address? So, first address, 97. Broadcast, 127. Actually, the last one is 126. The same thing will happen. Let's do the final one. Let's do the final one. First address, and this 225. Last broadcast address. Broadcast 255. Last address 254. Incremented 24 plus 32. Give you 256. You cannot go into that. There's no number. You still 1 before that. That's 255.
Actually, counting.
That's what I say.
That means we are doing actually 9 subnets to find out the 8th one.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You just write it like an
But in the
imaginary
exam,
number.
yeah.
Well, you don't need to.
But in the exam, we don't need to write all 8.
It depends on the question.
Okay. It's like
Sometimes
it was like
it's
that.
8, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. It depends. Guys, is it clear? Any questions? Yes.
Do you work out a single by 2 because the second subnet is 8?
No, you work the increment from the actual that way. So remember the question. The question is, let me just. So the question is basically here. I give you this question. So 192.168.10.0, but I've masked it to 27. So that 27 basically is number of ones, as I said. So that's 8 ones, 16, 24, 25, 26, 27. And the rest you have 8 bits here. So that's another 5 zeros to complete that 8. So that's your interesting part. How did I find the increment? Do you remember the table I showed you with the values? So I did the plus 1 to 8, plus
64.
64 plus 32. That will give you 224. We have a formula of 256 minus the number that you get will give you the increment. In this case, it was 32. This is how you want it. So, do you want another question?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Let's take a previous last year's exam.
But do we have some start machine there?
No, I need the one this one. Work this out, guys. 166 zeros masked to 19 or subnetted to 19. Give me the number of subnets. The only information I want is subnet address, first host, last host, and broadcast address. But you cannot get those details unless you do the full
Binary.
range. Is that right? So, take 5 to 10 minutes. I'll do it afterwards.
If it's all zeros, I suppose, isn't it?
No, we don't know that unless you do the subnetting. The 19.
Is it the same as the last one?
Sorry?
Is it the same as last one?
I don't know. Is it? The last one was this one. Not this one. It was 27.
Does
Is
it
that
make a
one?
difference?
It will be a lot major
Right.
difference. Try it. Don't be in a rush. Just try it to see how it works. Mm-hmm. Number of hosts. Do the subnets first.
For the host is number of zeros in the whole address.
Sorry?
For the host is a number of zeros in the whole address.
In the whole address. But the subnet is just once in the interesting ones. Okay? That's 2 minus 6.
Is the IP address
166.0. Yeah.
Do you know when it happens 0 to 0?
By
Oh,
the way-
it's just an interesting.
Which one?
That's what I was going to say.
Minus 2 as well.
Minus 2.
Not that, but this one.
So not 13.
No, no, 13.
So it is that.
13. Minus only the 2.
Oh, minus.
So 2 to the power 13 minus 2. Those are the reserved ones.
Oh, right.
Broadcast and the address, subnet address.
Oh, right. So it's always 2.
Always minus 2.
Okay.
Because in every subnet there are 2 addresses reserved: the subnet address and the broadcast.
then the last is address. 256. First of all,
How many points do you have? Let's do this. How many points are
You can't run a zero zero.
Right now,
The zeros there as well.
You hold the host, you count zeros. Substitute, you count ones.
give me the names.
So what, you count all the zeros?
No, just saying that you might.
Just interesting ones.
Yeah.
it is 30, because they're ghosts as well.
Is it?
Yeah, the zeros are ghosts.
They're all zeros. Isn't it?
Oh, zeros.
You don't count as those zeros.
Zeros.
You don't count them.
So that's the interesting part.
Right.
So if I go back to this one, just
Cross out that. Use
if I
that.
get this 1, 6, 6.
Yeah.
Zeros. Changes.
Let's ask him.
Now your increments. Continue. What's Did you not make a mistake? Why? You just need to work out with the hustle. Changes is not innovation.
I think it's 30. Because I remember he said we don't write the amount. That's why
The amount of what?
amount of like 2 to the power of 30.
Right.
You don't need to calculate that. But I'll ask him. That's what I remember. So remember on subnetting he said that.
I don't know.
What's the final? Give me the broadcast.
It might be more than that. It depends, it really depends on the range. I'm going for 5 ghosts. 5.
Yeah.
That's the last one. Exactly.
Do you count?
Want me to come and see?
Do you count the zeros as well?
Yeah, but that would be hostile.
30.
What did you say?
On the left.
On the left. Did you say?
So, yeah, that will be the host. So
Say that.
that will be the host. Zeros.
Give me that.
That's it.
So what's the first one?
Yeah.
First one.
He just
Give me the first
host.
one, rest.
He just says host. I don't know whether it's counted or not.
Where is 0, 1? 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4. Just feels like 255 people in this. Just because you didn't like it. What I'm saying is you have to. No, I'll show you. So first here, you skip the first. So what you're missing is the range is here. 1. Because you have 0, 1, 1. So you skip all of that. So it should be 0 and then here is the 2. So should that not be S1 as well? Because you're skipping what? That one.
Once you get these
That one.
before you get the
Okay.
Even if we don't count that, we don't need to have subnet. No, we don't need to have subnet. We just need.
So let's try to do it, guys. Okay. And the trick here is the interesting byte will not be the final one. The interesting byte will be the one before the last byte. So let's work out the actual subnets, i.e. the ones, the 19 that I gave you. So basically you have 19 ones, and that's 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, then the 5 to complete the actual byte, 5 zeros. I don't stop here because I still have final byte to cover, and that's basically the zeros. So if I want to give it now an actual annotation for each one of those bytes, that's your network. Network, what's that?
Interesting byte.
Exactly, that's your interesting byte. What's this?
Host.
That's the host. So now there's a difference between the previous question because now we have host to play with as well, not just the interesting bytes. So how can we change things now? Let's do the same formula. I'm trying to find number of subnets. And basically that's 2 to the power of 1s inside your interesting byte. And that's 2 to the power of 3, and that will give you 8 subnets. That's your subnets. What about your hosts? It's 2 to the power of 0s, not in the interested byte, in your actual address. And that's basically, sorry? The whole thing? To the power of 13. So that's 2 to the power of 13, but minus 2 as well, because in every subnet we have 2 addresses reserved, one for the broadcast and one for the actual subnet address. So always the number of hosts will be minus 2, because they are reserved. I don't want to have here the actual value. I don't want it to work out to the power of 13. Just leave it as a question mark. Okay? But you know there's a large range of numbers in here. Okay? Might be up to, that's the one. So that's basically number of hosts. So what is else? What's missing now? What do you need to know as well? Your actual increment. And basically, as the formula says, 256 minus the number of value of ones inside the interesting byte, and that's the 128 plus 64 plus 32. So similar to the previous question, and that's 224. That will give you an increment of 32. That's your increment. So now let's work out how does the table looks like, because now the game is inside the interested byte with the host. So it will be a difference in the table, not like the previous question. So let's do that. You already have it written down. So let's start with the first, second, fifth. Give me the subnet address of the first one. 166.0.0.0. That's your first subnet. What's your second subnet? 166.0.32.
32. 0.
Based on your increment, 0. Third one, 166.0.64.0. Let's stop here. Because you are only incrementing the interesting bytes as your subnet. Okay? So I'm doing 32 because the formula gave us 32. So what is your last address in the first subnet? Last address? Give me the first address. Let's make it simple. First address. Someone. 0, 1. Don't put 1 here. Don't put 1 here. Why? Because you skip 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until 255. So when you finish 255, you go back 1, 1, 0, 1, 2, 1, 3. So if I want to increment this should go up to 255. And then what you do, you put 1 here, and this goes back 0, 1, 2, 3, 255. Then you increment, that becomes 2, and the same range. So if you put 1 here and 0, you already skipped a full range of addresses. So your first address should be that. 166.0.0.1. What's your broadcast address?
31.1.255.
So that's 31.255. What is your last address?
31204.
Let's do the second one. First address.
33, 32, 33.
Be careful. If you say 33, you skipped. You can't say 033. So what's your first address? 32, 1. Last address? So give me the broadcast. 166.0.63, 255. Last address?
63.
And you do the rest for the rest of the question.
You know the question that is?
Yes.
Because you did not specify how we just look for how many subnets have first one.
Subnet, yeah.
Ah, I did. If
Why
I,
did you-
there's
Okay.
calculate the subnets for the network address range, giving the following information for each subnet.
Okay.
Subnet, first, last, and broadcast. So for each subnet means for the 8, and then I need the range of those,
So you remove the A.
which are for each means everything. In this case, it's 8.
You have to take A subnet.
For the 8 subnets.
How many markets? That's the
3, 2, 2, 2, 3, 10.
That's not enough.
What?
That's not enough.
That's enough. This is
That
very
one's
simple.
good. Yeah.
Because you're just doing the same information again and again and again.
we have put a question.
No, it's less than this one.
And for each subnet.
No, it's this one. This is easier than that. This is for 12 marks.
Which one's easier?
The CRT. ART, sorry.
And the ALP. I understand this more.
So I'll leave another variation of this in the tutorial to give you something
Yeah.
to do. So 224. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah. But when you want to do you want to do it from the right to the left, from the left to the right. So it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, rather than 8, 7, 6.
Oh,
But I don't know if you see the last one, it's in 4, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, just your passing mark is 40, so 10 is, quarter of it is. Now you are very hard audience to please. Any more questions? I'm done for today. I'm going to leave one variation for each one of those in the tutorials. Next week, in the lecture, I'm not going to provide anything, no practical stuff. I'm going to come in and say, ask me any question you want. Hopefully, that'll be 5 minutes and I'll be leaving. So, okay, see you in the tutorial. Have a nice weekend, guys. I mean the lecture. Can I have the register, please? Practical.